In this game, pixel art style meets turn-based strategy. How old school! But it's not just any strategy. This is Square Enix's return to the tactical roots that fans of Final Fantasy Tactics remember so well, but this time in virtual reality. This is Triangle Strategy, a game that will transport you back to the golden age of turn-based strategy games on your Quest 3 and Quest 3S. Triangle Strategy was first released on Steam in 2022 with very positive reviews, and today it launches on standalone Quest. I checked it early thanks to the early access and sponsorship by Square Enix, and I'm ready to tell you how well it translated into VR. The first thing you'll notice in Triangle Strategy is its visual style. It draws directly from classics like Final Fantasy Tactics with rich pixelated graphics. The sense of nostalgia is unreal. The art style brings a certain emotional warmth and feels timeless, really, especially if you grew up playing those games. Of course, turn-based combat is the main star of Triangle Strategy, but there is more to it. So before I do a deep dive into the battle mechanics, here's a couple more standout features of this game. First one is mixed reality support on Quest 3 and Quest 3S. It's mashing the game's environment with real-world surroundings, so you can see this giant map right in the middle of the room. You can move it around in different directions and rotate it 360 degrees, but you can also choose the game-themed backdrop instead. The lore and the story are very rich and thought through in this game. There's lots of politics involved in the storyline, and playing this game you will be faced with some important decisions that will change the course of the game eventually. Each important decision you make will change your convictions and affect your relationships with allies, so choose carefully. In addition to the battle mode, there's also a free roam mode where you can walk around different maps, talk to people, and collect important items like health potions and gold. Alright, now let's talk about the battle. There's a lot to cover. I consider myself rather experienced when it comes to turn-based strategies, but there was a lot for me to learn before I felt comfortable, especially if you're new to this genre. Do not skip tutorials. But I will also give you a quick rundown. You control a certain number of units or characters, each having different stats and special abilities. Your goal is to defeat enemy units. You'll play in turns and you can see which order yours and enemy units will attack by looking at your left wrist. For movement, each character has a set range, which determines how far they can travel across a grid-like battlefield. It's broken down by color. Blue cells show the zones where none of the enemy units can reach me, but pink cells are within their attack range. Danger zones, essentially. The game even gives these red lines pointing out which enemy units can attack me. I love how this game gives you a lot of information about the consequences of your movement before you commit to the action. And then you attack. Select your attack from the list and choose the enemy unit to attack. The cool thing about these types of games is that there are special moves. Each character in Triangle Strategy has a unique skill or skills, and learning these made me feel like I was finding hidden tricks of the game. Take my Pyromancer for instance. Her fire spells can scorch multiple cells in one go, which is a very powerful move. One time I teamed her up with my Sorcerer, who can enhance magical damage, and together they became a power duo, and my Pyromancer has become unstoppable. There are so many little details in this game, it's insane. For example, choosing where to face after completing a move, because if the enemy attacks you from the back, they will deal critical damage, so you can use strategy to face your back to the end of the map or to a friendly unit to avoid critical strikes from the enemies. It felt like a dance, figuring out how to position everyone on this battlefield to gain advantage. And attacking from high grounds, for example, also helps you deal more damage, and low grounds will put you in a disadvantage. There are also different actions that can cause status effects like blindness or rage. The rage, for example, makes enemies more likely to miss attacks, and that actually saved me in a tough battle once. This enemy just kept missing, giving me the precious time I needed to counterattack and pull off a win. I gotta be honest, it took me longer than I thought to grasp just how it all worked. I don't get it. Those early battles didn't come easily. I stumbled and even made some really frustrating mistakes, like accidentally skipping turns by selecting wait instead of an attack. It's super annoying. But once I spent a little time with it, it all just clicked, and I finally started having so much fun with these turn-based battles. True, the learning curve is steep, but if you push yourself through that very first battle, you will start really enjoying the battles and all the strategy that goes into it and the true depth of the gameplay mechanics. Honestly, I've only just scratched the surface with how much this game packs. Triangle Strategy also invests heavily in story, although here's when the game has flaws. The plot is grand in scope, centering on determining the fate of three kingdoms with conflicting resources. This narrative could be fascinating, but I found it a bit disjointed from the flow of the gameplay because the cutscenes were so long and they kept dragging on, especially early on. When you're not yet invested in the story, you have to sit through a lot of dialogue, and these scenes play out on a flat scroll rather than in VR's immersive 3D space. That is of course because Triangle Strategy is adapted to VR from the flat screen mode rather than built for VR from ground up. But this creates a disconnect between the story and the actual engaging gameplay. For me, it affects the game pacing when I must watch lengthy scenes filled with dialogues, especially if you're eager to dive back into the battle. The dialogue-heavy approach might be interesting for those deeply invested in the lore, but it does risk alienating those who came for strategy rather than the soap opera. There's definitely a lot of dialogue between the first and the second battle in the game, and in VR, watching those cutscenes on a flat screen can feel a bit excessive. But the lore is interesting and very detailed, so it's very entertaining if you're prepared to sit through it. But that is so far the only thing that I did not like about this game. In a gaming world where few titles offer a tactical challenge in complexity to match the level of Triangle Strategy, Square Enix has brought to us something truly unique and rare for VR. For fans of turn-based strategies, this game brings a sense of nostalgia while still feeling fresh. The delight in rediscovering pixel graphics and slow, thoughtful gameplay cannot be overstated here. It reminds me of the times where games didn't rush to deliver thrills every second, but instead encouraged patience, strategy, and mastery. The voiceover quality in Triangle Strategy adds a surprising level of immersion. I really like the actors that they picked to voice the characters, as they brought their personalities to life, even though all of these are just little pixelated people. But the music too contributes a lot in this game. It's rich, it's very atmospheric, and it fits the medieval setting of the game with a nostalgic charm. Triangle Strategy may not be perfect, yet it stands as a tribute to classic turn-based strategy games. With its demanding battle mechanics and charming retro style, it offers a very unique experience for VR that will appeal to old-school RPG fans, but also to new gamers if they're willing to get invested in the lore. The cutscenes or heavy dialogue may hinder the pacing, but they don't overshadow the joy that I found in these meticulously planned battles. For anyone craving a return to thoughtful, strategic gameplay, Triangle Strategy is a journey definitely worth taking. For those willing to invest time in learning the mechanics and thinking through every move, this game rewards patience with satisfying tactical combat that feels like coming home to an old favorite. I would definitely recommend you give it a go if you're a fan of this game genre. But if you're more into multiplayer VR games, then check out my recent list where I picked up the best of the best games that you can play with your friends. I'll see you there.